In recent years, something strange has been happening in the NFL. Despite the incredible impact running backs have on the game, their value is declining. Teams aren't willing to pay them like they used to, and more elite running backs are either holding out or getting cut. Why is that? What happened to the days when having an elite running back was essential for winning championships? Today, we're going to break down the rise and fall of the running back position in the NFL, explaining how this once glorified role became one of the most underappreciated in football. To truly understand what's happening with running backs today, we need to rewind a few decades to the golden era of the position. Back in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, having a dominant running back wasn't just a luxury, it was a necessity. NFL offenses were built around the run game, and teams needed a strong, reliable back to carry the ball 20 or 30 times per game. Running the football was the cornerstone of success, and running backs were among the most valuable players in the league. In those days, legendary figures like Jim Brown, Walter Payton, and O.J. Simpson were household names. These players embodied the grit and physicality that defined football during this era. Teams relied on their ability to break tackles, carry defenders, and pick up crucial first downs to control the clock and wear down opposing defenses. Let's take Walter Payton as an example. Payton, often referred to as Sweetness, was a generational talent who rushed for over 16,000 yards during his career. He wasn't just a great runner, he was also known for his toughness, work ethic, and ability to play through injury. He epitomized what it meant to be a workhorse running back, someone who could be counted on week in and week out to deliver results, no matter how many hits he took. Fast forward to the 1990s, and we've got Emmitt Smith leading the Dallas Cowboys to 3 Super Bowl championships. Smith was all about durability and consistency. He finished his career as the NFL's all-time leading rusher with over 18,000 yards. Back then, if you had a player like Emmitt Smith on your team, you were in a great position to win. For decades, that formula worked. Teams knew that if they had a dominant running back, they could control the game. But as the NFL evolved, so did the role of the running back. The days of bruising backs taking 30 carries a game started to fade, and a new era of football began to emerge. So when things start to change? A lot of it can be traced back to the early 2000s, when the NFL made a series of rule changes that fundamentally shifted the way offenses operated. In 2004, the league began enforcing the illegal contact rule more strictly. This rule limited how much defensive backs could jam or disrupt wide receivers down the field. Before this, cornerbacks and safeties could manhandle receivers, making it much harder for quarterbacks to complete passes. The NFL implemented these changes partly in response to what the New England Patriots did to Peyton Manning's Indianapolis Colts in the 2003 AFC Championship game. The Patriots' physical defense, led by players like Ty Law, basically bullied the Colts receivers, completely disrupting Manning's passing game. After that game, the NFL decided to crack down on illegal contact, and it opened the floodgates for quarterbacks and wide receivers to put up big numbers. The result was immediate. In 2004, Peyton Manning broke Dan Marino's single-season touchdown record, throwing for 49 touchdowns, and that was just the beginning. Over the next decade, passing stats exploded, and the NFL transitioned into a pass-first league. Teams realized that throwing the ball was not only more efficient, but also more exciting for fans. High-scoring offenses became the new normal, and the run game took a back seat. But it wasn't just the illegal contact rule that shifted things. The NFL continued to implement rules that protected quarterbacks and made it easier to pass the ball. In 2008, the league introduced the Brady Rule, which prohibited defenders from hitting quarterbacks below the knee after Tom Brady suffered a season-ending knee injury in 2008. This was followed by more rules aimed at protecting receivers and quarterbacks, such as the defenseless player rule and stricter penalties for defensive holding. All of these changes made it harder for defenses to stop the pass, and as a result, teams began to rely more on their quarterbacks and less on their running backs. The days of pounding the ball 30 times a game were replaced by offenses designed to spread the field and air it out. Running backs, once the focal point of every offense, were now playing a supporting role in the pass-heavy NFL. As the NFL shifted toward a more pass-oriented game, running backs had to evolve. No longer could they just be bruisers who ran between the tackles. To stay relevant, running backs needed to become more versatile, capable of contributing in both the running and passing game. This evolution gave rise to a new breed of running backs, players who could hurt defenses in multiple ways. Take Christian McCaffrey, for example. McCaffrey isn't just a great runner, he's also one of the best pass-catching backs in the league. In 2019, he became just the third player in NFL history to record 1,000 rushing yards and 1,000 receiving yards in the same season. His ability to line up as a receiver, catch passes out of the backfield, and make defenders miss in space makes him incredibly valuable in today's NFL. But even McCaffrey has faced injury challenges, and the Carolina Panthers ultimately traded him to the San Francisco 49ers in 2022, despite his elite talent. Another example is Alvin Kamara of the New Orleans Saints. Kamara had made a name for himself by being a dynamic playmaker, whether it's running the ball or catching passes. He's not the kind of running back you're going to give 30 carries to in a game, but his ability to make explosive plays in the open field makes him a crucial part of the Saints' offense. These dual-threat running backs have managed to stay relevant in the modern NFL, but their role has changed. They're no longer expected to carry the load on the ground. Instead, they're part of a more balanced offensive approach. The emphasis is on versatility, being able to run, catch, block, and even contribute on special teams. This shift has allowed certain running backs to thrive, but it hasn't stopped the overall decline in their value in the NFL. As the role of the running back evolved, so did the way teams approach their contracts. In the past, elite running backs could expect to sign massive deals with teams willing to invest heavily in their services. But by the 2010s, general managers across the league had started to realize something. Paying big money to running backs wasn't a sound investment. Here's the harsh truth. Running backs take more punishment than any other position on the field. Every time they touch the ball, they're putting their body at risk. Whether it's getting hit by 300-pound defensive linemen or trying to outrun linebackers and safeties, the position is brutal, and the wear and tear add up quickly. The average career for an NFL running back is just 2.5 to 3 years, compared to 10 or more years for quarterbacks and wide receivers. That's a huge difference. Because of this, many teams are reluctant to give running backs long-term contracts. By the time a running back hits their second contract, they're often already absorbed a significant amount of punishment, and their production may start to decline. GMs know that running backs tend to have a short shelf life, so they've become cautious about handing out big deals. And look at what's happened in recent years. Liion Bal, once one of the most dynamic backs in the league, set out an entire season to secure a big contract. He eventually signed a 4-year, $52 million deal with the New York Jets, but he never regained his Pro Bowl form and was out of the league just a few seasons later. David Johnson, who was a fantasy football darling after a breakout 2016 season with the Arizona Cardinals, signed a 3-year, $39 million extension, only to be traded a few years later after his production dropped. Then there's Todd Gurley. Gurley was the best running back in the league in 2017 and 2018, leading the Rams to the Super Bowl. He signed a 4-year, $60 million deal with $45 million guaranteed, but by 2020, the Rams had cut him due to his knee injuries. It's a prime example of how quickly running backs can go from being at the top of their game to being out of a job. Ezekiel Elliot is another case. After a stellar start to his career, Elliot held out in 2019, demanding a new contract from the Dallas Cowboys. The team gave in, signing him to a 6-year, $19 million extension. But just a few years later, Elliott's production had declined, and by 2023, the Cowboys had released him. It was clear that he wasn't the same explosive player he was during his first 2 seasons. These cautionary tales had led teams to rethink how they approach the running back position. Why invest big money in a position where the player might be out of their prime just a few years into their contract? With long-term contracts becoming rarer, teams have turned to the franchise tag as a way to keep their star running backs without making a long-term commitment. The franchise tag is essentially a 1-year deal that pays the player the average salary of the top players in their position. For running backs, this means they can still make a decent amount of money in a single season, but it doesn't give them the long-term security they want. This has led to a growing divide between players and teams. Running backs like Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs are finding themselves stuck under the franchise tag, unable to secure a long-term deal. These players know that their career window is short, and playing under a 1-year deal means they're one injury away from potentially never landing that big contract. Barkley, who led the New York Giants to the playoffs in 2022, has expressed his frustration with the situation. After rushing for over 1,300 yards and proving himself as one of the best backs in the league. He wanted a long-term deal that reflected his value, but instead of getting the payday he deserved, the Giants placed a franchise tag on him, leaving him in limbo. Barkley knows the risks. He knows that one bad hit could end his season, or worse, his career. And if that happens, the team can just move on to the next guy. Josh Jacobs is in a similar boat. After leading the league in rushing yards in 2022, Jacobs wanted a long-term contract with the Las Vegas Raiders. But instead of locking him down, the Raiders used the franchise tag to keep him for another year. Jacobs has made it clear that he's not happy with the situation and has even considered holding out. While elite running backs continue to fight for long-term contracts, some teams have found success without breaking the bank on the position. The Kansas City Chiefs are a perfect example of this. Instead of investing heavily in a star running back, the Chiefs have used a running back by committee approach, relying on a mix of cheap, versatile backs to get the job done. In their recent Super Bowl victories, the Chiefs didn't need an elite high-paid back to carry them. In fact, they've used late-round draft picks and low-cost free agents to fill the position. Players like Damian Williams, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and Isaiah Pacheco have all contributed to the Chiefs' success without commanding top-dollar contracts. This strategy has proven effective, and other teams are starting to follow suit. Instead of relying on one workhorse back, they spread the carries around and use their running backs as complementary pieces to their passing attack. It's a smart approach in a league where injuries are common and the salary cap is tight. But while this strategy works for the Chiefs and other teams, it's also part of the reason why running backs are seeing their value drop. If teams can get the same production from a committee of cheaper players, why would they spend big on one guy? So where does this leave us? What's the future of the running back position in the NFL? There's no denying that running backs are still incredibly important in the game. Players like Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb, and Christian McCaffrey are still producing an elite level, and their ability to impact games can't be ignored. But as teams continue to prioritize passing offenses and spread the ball around, the days of the workhorse back may be behind us. Some have proposed solutions to help running backs get paid what they're worth. One idea is to shorten rookie contracts for running backs, allowing them to hit free agency sooner and secure their payday while they're still in their prime. Others have suggested creating a league-wide fund that compensates running backs based on their performance, rewarding them for touchdowns, yards, and overall impact. But no matter what changes are made, it's clear that the running back position has been devalued in today's NFL. As long as teams continue to win by passing the ball and using cheaper backs, it's unlikely that we'll see a return to the days when running backs were the highest paid players on the field. Thanks for watching. Let us know what you think about the state of running backs in the NFL. And don't forget to subscribe for more football content. See you in the next one.